Hello everyone. I moved, so welcome to my bedroom in the meantime while I get my bookshelf set up. But I need to talk to you guys desperately because I read a book that just absolutely blew me away. It was almost as good as The Will of the Many, which is what I reviewed last and is probably going to be my favorite book of the year. But this is a close second. It was so good. And the book that we're talking about today is The Blighted Stars by Megan E. O'Keefe. She's the author of the Protectorate trilogy, which you may have heard of. I think that Velocity Weapon, the first book, was doing the rounds on Book Talk like a year or two ago. And I really enjoyed that series, but this book is just on another level. It was so fantastic. So you guys definitely have to go pick it up. So what is this book about? This book, it follows two characters. They are kind of mortal enemies, and they are essentially stranded together on a hostile planet, and they have to figure out how to survive. So a little more backstory. In this world, humanity has spread to the stars, terraforming planets, and there are a bunch of merit families, and they are basically like a hegemony that rules the entire galaxy because they're so wealthy. But there's this one specific family, the Mercator family, that has a monopoly on space exploration and terraforming. And the last one or two planets that they have discovered and terraformed have basically been destroyed by complete ecological collapse. And one of our main characters, Naira, she basically uncovered something and was a whistleblower. Okay, so in this world, humanity has spread to the stars, terraforming planets and whatnot, and there are these merit families who are uber wealthy and basically own the entire galaxy. But there's this one specific family, the Mercators, and they have a monopoly on space exploration and terraforming. And so one of the characters that we're following is the heir to this dynasty, basically, and the other character, his name is Tarquin, and the other character we're following, Naira Sharp, she is the ex-bodyguard of Tarquin's father, and she turned into like an eco-activist slash terrorist, depending on who you ask. She joined this highly militarized group called the Conservators, who are basically trying to save these planets from being destroyed. And yeah, so these two are mortal enemies, and at the beginning of the book, Tarquin is on a ship with his father. They are just arriving to the 6th cradle planet, and basically their ship gets shot by another ship, and Tarquin and some survivors, they have to flee into an escape pod, and they crash land on this dead, desolate, dying planet. And along the way, Naira Sharp has her mind injected into the body of Tarquin's bodyguard. And she has to inhabit that role and pretend that she really is his bodyguard and protect him on this desolate planet. While in reality, she absolutely hates him, as he's the man who gave the testimony that sealed her mind away. Because this world is a lot like altered carbon, where your mind is removable, basically. You can cast it to another location and have it put in a 3D printed body. Everyone has 3D printed bodies, and this has greatly increased people's lifespans. The only issue is that MAPS, is what they call the neural pathways, they can crack after enough repeated deaths. So when people reach like this threshold of PTSD, when they're brought back, they're caught in this endless scream and have to be put down, basically. So Naira is in the body of this woman who is supposed to be protecting Tarquin, and she absolutely hates him. Meanwhile, Tarquin is completely oblivious to this, but he hates Naira because she tried to take down his family, basically. So these two and the other survivors crash land on the planet, and they have to figure out a way to survive because this planet has been enveloped by something called a shroud, which is this fungus that turns everything gray and dead, basically. It eats all the biomass. And so there's really nothing left on this planet, and they have to figure out why this happened, for one. because this planet wasn't supposed to have been terraformed yet. But upon arrival, it was already dead. That's strange. So there are some mysteries that they have to figure out while they're on the planet and while they're trying to survive in this awful environment. And the book was just fantastic. Megan O'Keefe, she writes at like a breakneck pace. I think that she's a master of pacing because all of her books are just so well done that you never want to put them down. And I didn't want to put this down. The audiobook is 20 hours and I finished it in a day from like 5 a.m. to midnight. And it was just fantastic. So let's talk about the world building a little bit, because I think that this world is really, really fascinating because there are a lot of ramifications to people being able to like live extended lives in these 3D printed bodies. And you see how lives are basically expendable. All of these merit families that I mentioned, they are basically like their own countries. And so general people, they have to choose a merit family to work for, and as part of like their employment contract, they get certain, rights or privileges or whatever. And so anyone who is on like exploration mission or like a military mission, they have clauses in their contracts that if they die, the company will pay their phoenix fees, the fees needed for resurrection. And so these people, they're very expendable because they can be killed over and over again, sent into dangerous situations, and they can just be revived until they reach that limit and crack. And so I thought that was really, really interesting, and I liked seeing how that was explored, and the fact that minds can be put into different bodies. So anyone you know could actually be the mind of someone else. That's really creepy, and I feel like that would cause like an air of distrust around everyone. So I thought that was really interesting. And what I also liked about it was the talk of the shroud. So in this world, the Mercator family, they mine these new planets that they find for a mineral called Relkatite. And Relkatite is basically what makes the world work. It's like of utmost importance to society at this point in time. And Relkatite has some interesting mysteries surrounding it too. And you really do get a sense that the stakes in this story are a lot higher than you might first assume. And I thought that was very, very interesting. In terms of the characters, I definitely enjoyed Naira. I enjoyed her more than Tarquin. However, like I said, I liked both of them. I thought they were great. But Naira, she was just more compelling to me because, like I said, she is in the body of a person who's supposed to be protecting her mortal enemy, basically. And so she has to pretend. And so the entire time that she's on this planet in this incredibly stressful survival situation, she also has the added layer of pretending that she actually, cares about and doesn't hate this man. And we get to see how her feelings kind of evolve over the course of the book. And we get a lot of her inner turmoil at what's going on and the assumptions that she had about Tarquin kind of being undermined. And she has like this push and pull back and forth in her mind over this issue because he was kind of just like a faceless enemy, a big bad in her mind. And this situation is humanizing him, and she's realizing that Tarquin isn't as awful and evil as his father, basically who she was the bodyguard for in the past, right? So I really enjoyed Naira's perspective. Tarquin I really enjoyed too. He was out of his depth because he's not really involved in like the family business at all. He went to school and is now a scholar on geology, basically. And he just wants to study rocks and read books, as it says in the blurb for the story. And so he is completely out of his depth in a situation that is so dire. And he's also out of his depth in terms of commanding people and being a leader, because everyone is looking to him to guide them. And the way that these families are treated, they are treated like better than royalty. So something that I thought was really interesting was Tarquin, in his attempt basically not to be an asshole, because he's very conscious of his position at the top of this hierarchy. He does what he can to kind of not take advantage of the system. But what's interesting, and that another character points out, is that he's basically undermining the prescribed ways of interacting with this noble. And so it basically means that everyone is on eggshells around him all the time. And in his attempt to be a better person, he's actually making the situation harder for them because they don't know how to handle this. And I thought that was interesting. But yeah, over the course of the story, you see Tarquin grow as he, stops being so bookish and has to deal with this dire threat. And you also see him grow into a more confident leader. So I really like the character development for both of them throughout the book. The plot is the best part. The plot of this book, even if I was to spoil it, I feel like it would be very hard to explain, even though I guess it's not that complicated. But yeah, I just have a hard time explaining it coherently. The plot of this book is initially all of these survivors crash landing on this planet, and they need to find a way to get off-world again, but they don't have, this planet has no resources for them to use, really, because everything is dead. And they have no technology to signal for help or anything, and they are running low on supplies, they're rationing their food, and it seems that there's also some kind of sickness spreading among the people that have landed on this planet. And that sickness is important and gets very, very interesting. But yeah, that is the initial plot, but at the same time, our main characters, they are also trying to figure out what caused this takeover by the Shroud that killed the entire planet. And they are also trying to find out if it's true what Naira whistle blew in the past, that the Mercator mining practices are what causes the ecological collapse of the planets. And so there's that mystery to unravel while they're there. And we see the book just really, really goes there. I was very, very shocked at how large the stakes got and how kind of existential the threat was as I got through this book. And I just thought that it was fantastic, and it really twisted and turned in a way that I think you can predict, but it is also not expected, if that makes sense. So I love the plot of this book. I think that is the strongest selling point for it. It is just so good to read. I feel like Megan O'Keefe really leveled up in her writing ability, and her writing ability was already really, really high with her Protectorate series. So this is just a fantastic book all around. I would give it 5 stars, hands down, no doubt. And I think that you guys should bump it up your TBR if anything that I said in this video interested you. So that is all that I have for you guys today, but be on the lookout for some more reviews. I finished the newest Malazan Esselmont book, Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. That book was quite a ride. I feel like I'm a bad person because I was rooting for who I shouldn't have. But yeah, that's just a very fun book, and I want to talk about it even though it's not fantasy. It is a departure from, what I usually talk about on the channel, but the book was just so good and so interesting that I want to talk to you guys about it. So yeah, be on the lookout for some reviews, and have a good one. Peace.